Hello. Hello. We're gonna start with our little theme song because it's Miss Uncustomary Rogers coming at ya. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Would you be mine?
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine?
Would you be mine?
It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor?
Okay, so let's see here. We are going to talk about perfectionism today. So all month long, we have been talking about motivation and procrastination and the dualities of this like energy spectrum here. And what came up for a lot of us at the very, very beginning, which we have been reflecting on this week on our workbooks that came out with week one, which is really just what was how did we move this month? How did we shift, if at all, with very specific areas? And one of the things that came up in the very first week with procrastination is, why do we procrastinate? And one of them is perfectionism. A lot of people identify as perfectionists, and a lot of us also do not want to release perfectionism. It's a label that we feel comfortable with. We kind of want to hide behind. We also can really derail our lives with. You know, there are some really beautiful elements actually to perfectionism, and we're going to get into those today. But perfectionism ultimately becomes an issue when we are feeling dysfunctional about it, when we're feeling distress about it. And it's when it stops you from really living the way that you want to live, working, loving, creating the way that you want to love, work, create, and live. So having high standards is fine. I found this quote online that I really liked when it was describing perfectionism. And it says, striving for quality is admirable, but expecting nothing short of flawless performance is or outcome for every time in your life is a recipe for unhappiness. So when failure to meet one's own impossibly high standards, it will result in a feeling of personal worthlessness. So this is clear why being a true perfectionist can feel awful. So yeah, like we have these feelings of perfectionism, and sometimes we really aren't ready to release the label or the emergency feeling of perfectionism, where we have this thing that's kind of ready and waiting to go, where maybe we think, oh, well, I'll get this out when I need to. Maybe there's something that I procrastinated on, and perfectionism will be something that I pull out, and that'll be good for me to just be able to emergency tap into perfectionism for my productivity, because productivity is super important. It's way more important than my passion. It's way more important than my motivation or my desire or being inspired. Productivity, we have tapped into the dysfunction around productivity. So today I want to, as Miss Uncustomary Rogers, this character that I channel, and when we have different characters every week, Miss Uncustomary Rogers comes when we're talking about kindness. And I want to talk about how can we be kind to the perfectionist parts of ourselves, because there is always something good that we can find in things. There's always something good. And even when that's really what optimism is, right? We've done a whole month on optimism and pessimism. And when we look for sparkly linings, silver linings, how can we look at perfectionism with a sparkly lining? So I think perfectionism, when we release the label, the security blanket, the um, the idea of it needing to be something that is a, a negative coping skill, and maybe it's done more in moderation, then what is it that you can really, really get out of perfectionism? What are the good qualities, the good traits that we can see in perfectionism? So if you can think of anything right now, you can feel free to type it in the chat of what like good qualities you can think of, kind of milking out of perfectionism in a positive way that we can see maybe as it applies to work. I feel like that's a really easy scope to like look through. Or yeah, striving for something better. Absolutely. And so what that goes along with the first thing that I wanted to drive. Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that I wrote is a kind of a double-edged sword, which is high standards. So I think there's always a spectrum with everything, right? This duality where when we have high standards, then we can have something very negative and toxic where it feels like we have too high expectations, where it feels like there's not enough, we're not going to be enough. But there's something absolutely great to be said about having high standards. We don't want to have like shit poor standards, right? We want to believe that we are worthy of what we want in life. So having high standards is really great and important. And it can be applied, everything that I'm saying can be applied to, again, work, life, love, creativity, I mean, you name it. So the next thing is high efficiency. So by that, I mean, when you are doing something, it is effective, right? So the thing that you are doing is, I like to think about when I did typing with like Mavis Beacon, there was like this like typing program in the 90s. And there's plenty of ways to measure your how fast you type, right? But when you type, there's they take into account not just how fast you're going, but how many errors there are, right? So um if you type really, really fast, then you that's going to be a high score. But if you make a ton of errors and all the words don't match up, then you're not going to have as high of a score as someone that types maybe a little slower but is more accurate. So when we're thinking about something that's efficient, then we want it to be like both. We want it to be quick but also efficient and accurate. So I think perfectionism and moderation, where we're looking at effectiveness, high effectiveness, and we're also looking at accuracy. We're looking at there being less errors and like to fix ultimately. So when you go, and that can look really good for like a company, right? Or anything that you're doing, whether it's like it's a home project or something. So if you are having less errors, then that means that you have less, like you have less time that you need to go back to look over something, and less money and resources that you need to really put into fixing something because you maybe went too fast doing something hastily. That also means that perfectionists can be really good at catching errors, right? So because of maybe their eye at looking at something, then with this very like high standard view, that they're going to be very good proofreaders as well with their work and other people's work. So they're going to be very good with helping someone else. Very good helpers. Perfectionists can be very good helpers. And it's interesting because when we talk about the harder aspects to release, they can also be very difficult to work with in group settings. And we'll get into that in a minute, but I think it's again this duality of looking at how amazing it is to all these skills that you can have with this perfectionist mindset, and how you can use them for, Superman good, right? But it can also feel like this the kryptonite, right? Because it keeps you from doing what you want to do. There's also the potential to be extremely organized, to be extremely clean, to have a streamlined production, to have a polished presentation, to be very detail oriented, which also makes other people feel seen. So whether when you're very focused on details, that's going to make like a presentation or a craft project like pop, right? It's going to make it really, really look great. But it's also going to translate to people skills and make it feel like if you noticed how someone might be feeling, or if you took the time on this thing to really think about all the angles, then someone else is going to feel much more seen by it. This perfectionism and moderation can also help people like notice that you're going above and beyond for something, right? If you're really putting in all this time, this detail oriented, this organization, the accuracy, the high efficiency, and the high standards, it ultimately is more likely to feel like the energy that you're putting into something, no matter what it is, has gone above and beyond. So whether you're looking at an Instagram feed or a portfolio, or the way that someone feels about the energy that you're spending with someone, you're going to be like, wow, this person really like does the thing. They're going above and beyond. And why is that? Like there's a difference between doing the bare minimum and then there's maybe like a medium point, right? Where we are doing maybe like an above average job, right? And then there's like this like very extra kind of uh mode. And I think perfectionism can be the very extra mode. So that also comes with its own pitfalls, right? Because when we talk about like pouring from someone else from your cup and filling up someone else's, that extra, where is that energy coming from? It's more likely to be coming from your cup, that you're pouring from your cup to do the extra. And maybe you're prioritizing someone else's care or peace or just their happiness over your own energy or rest or whatever. Perfectionism can also be very good at asking why with analytical skills, very good at asking why. And they're also really good at taking on new challenges because they have that drive. Like Sky said, they have the drive and they want to like show that they can do the thing. They want to be like, I can take this on, like I can do it. I will say yes to this thing. You want to hand it to me? I will do it and I'll figure out a way. And like that also can not be true on the other end when you have a paralysis of being like, well, I know that I'm good at this thing, but I want to stay in my comfort zone with that, because if I only feel good at this thing, then how do I know that I'll be good at that thing? Because I know I can really, really excel and go above and beyond in this area of like A to C, but D through Z feel totally like I haven't proven that I can do that yet. So I'm going to stick in A to C and be like this big fish, or a very big fish in this small pond of A to C. And then D to Z, I could really have fun with, but I'm not going to even bother. So those are some ways where perfectionism can be really, really helpful with, just enjoying how the good sparkly lining of perfectionism can affect us when we embrace the good aspects of it. And obviously everything comes with these energy polarity spectrums, but we can see just that these are good things. Okay, so the next part is that I want to address like the harder aspects of perfectionism, and the like the things that we might want to feel more inclined to release in terms of this perfectionism umbrella. So if you have any guesses, feel free to type them in. You know, maybe it would be losing sight of the big picture. I think that people who are being in the perfectionist mindset can be so detail oriented, or like, analytically focused, and be kind of get tunnel vision on this one specific thing that they're doing, and kind of lose the connection to their passion, which was a huge topic that we talked about this month, and really disconnect from why it is that they even started or said yes to this thing in the first place. So the remedy to that is to always come back to your passion, and to continue to connect to your why over and over and over again, like mentally, cognitively, but also like tangibly as you're doing whatever the thing is, to ask yourself, why am I still doing this? Why is this something that's important to me? Is it because I want to make money? Is it because this thing drives me intrinsically, that I'm passionately connected to this? Why am I bothering with this? Why is this something that I'm putting any energy into? And if you really can't find an answer for that, and if that answer is so far disconnected from your own list of values, which I strongly encourage you to have a manifesto, a list of your own values that are in line with your higher future self. If your answer of like, why am I doing this, doesn't somehow connect to that, then this project or whatever it is might not be something relevant for you right now. And maybe there's a way that you can actually release the thing that you're working on. The next thing is the harder aspects that we might want to release is the ability to concentrate. So when we're just talking about losing sight of the big picture with that tunnel vision, it's interesting because we can have tunnel vision, which gives us almost like this sense of hyper focus. But I think with that, it can also feel very difficult to concentrate on something when we are so focused on fear, because that is such a huge aspect of perfectionism and procrastination. When we talk about motivation and procrastination, we've identified that motivation is love and procrastination is fear. And perfectionism is also a very specific kind of fear. And we're going to get into specific questions at the end here that are going to prompt you about your specific kind of fear with perfectionism. But when you're having an inability to concentrate, then it's because you're scared, and you're doing something that's kind of like you're turning the gears. You are just like, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. I have to do this. Not that I get to do this, that I have to do this. This is very important because of something that I've been preconditioned to do. There's a timeline, there's a deadline, there's something that's blah, blah, blah. And where is your focus? Are you multitasking? Are you freaked out? Are you operating from fear? Are you present in your body? Are you being mindful? Have you even connected to the why? Are you focused at all? What can you do to focus? How can you ground yourself? How can you practice mindfulness while you're working on the thing? Because concentration is completely different for the way that everyone's mind works, whether you have, anxiety, ADHD, or not. There's so many reasons that our mind works completely differently. So focusing for you, the only things that we can really do across the board are to become more grounded and centered, and to breathe, and to focus on your five senses, and to come back to this moment and why it is that you're doing what you're doing. So we've talked about the the difficulty to follow through. And that was week 5's challenge that we did just yesterday, that's uploaded to the group. We did a whole EFT tapping training on the block that and limiting story that we have with like, I cannot finish my stuff. I can't finish a project. I'm someone who starts a lot of stuff. I can't finish it. I can't finish it through. Or I'm paralyzed with fear with even just beginning something. So like both of those dualities are a different limiting story where we are telling ourselves like, I can't do this. And one of the things that we also talked about this month was ruling out specific words like can't, should, try, and wish. So when we connect to our motivation again, which is what our passion, our desire, and I recommend doing that EFT training and really just like coming back and being like, what is my holdup with this limiting story? What is my fear? And that the questions that we do at the end will also help you with that. So one of the other harder aspects that is like, you can be difficult to work with if you have all of these things that you're doing, like you're maybe like very scattered, or you're very particular, you're like, disconnected. You can be very difficult to work with. You could be someone like, if you're in a group setting where you're just like, no, I don't trust you, right? There's a lot, like so many people identify with like the group setting, the group project in college or school, right? Where they are like, I got assigned a group project and now I am just going to do all the work because I don't trust any of these people to do any of their stuff, which is like totally legit, honestly. Like sometimes people really just do not do their work, right? But I think there's a huge aspect of trust that happens with perfectionist mindset where we don't trust things to happen because we think that we have to do it ourselves or it won't get done, or that it's not going to get done right, or the way that we perceive it to be right. So that can make us difficult to work with. People don't want to do that. People want to be trusted. People don't want to be micromanaged. People want to be like entrusted with stuff. If you're a manager or you run your own business or you have a partner, like being a perfectionist is ultimately going to be a huge downfall in that, because you're not going to be able to leave the house or go on vacation or go to the dentist because you're going to constantly be worried, like, are they doing what I thought that I think they should be doing or what I told them to do? Because it's what you think how you think it should be taken care of. And even if you're very explicit and you trust them, you're still like, oh, but what if something comes up that I didn't explicitly lay out? And then things, an emergency happens and like they don't know exactly how to handle it. And I'm worried that it's not going to be taken care of exactly how I want it to be. And yeah, that's true. Maybe it won't be, but you have to only surround yourself with people that you trust to do the thing, because maybe it's not going to be exactly how you would handle it, but will the end result be that it gets taken care of in a way that feels safe, in a way that feels wrapped up, in a way that feels okay? And like, if you need to enter later and mingle a little bit, then it's okay. There's a difference between someone handling a situation in a different order or with a different mindset a little bit than you, and then someone just being like, hey, I didn't feel like feeding your cats while you were gone. Like, that's a completely different thing. So ways that you can kind of like work on this are to purposefully work with other people, to purposefully entrust other people with small tasks at first, things that might not really really hurt you if it goes wrong, and do it small, to build up your confidence and with people that you trust first. The bigger the trust, the easier it is. And you don't want to go like on the street to a stranger and ask them to watch your house, because that's crazy. But you do want to maybe ask someone that you love and trust to do something very small, even if it's like going to like get you something from the fridge and maybe not being like as specific as you would have been, and seeing if they can really do it, you know, without you micromanaging the hell out of it and making them a map of how to get it out of the fridge. Can they do it? Maybe you don't need to micro explain every little detail of your life, and how many minutes and hours of your life would you get back if you did that? Like if you didn't do that, rather, to everyone in your life. Because we think we need to over explain and analyze and like just do everything for everyone all the time. And a lot of that comes from like a caregiver aspect as well. Perfectionism is very often wrapped up in caregiver. But yeah, also diversifying the people that you work with, the people that you engage with, the people that you talk to, people that specifically might have different kinds of approaches to creativity, or maybe even politics, or work ethics, not ethics necessarily. You want your values to be in line, I think. But just things again that don't really rock the boat in terms of, if this happens, it's not that big of a deal ultimately at the end of the day. So like ethics and values are important, but if someone loads the toilet paper the opposite way that you do, I think you can be friends with them. Like, I mean, to be fair, if it's upside down, it drives me insane, and I do think that those people should warn you that they do that. But um there should be a sign on their front door. But but you can be friends with them, right? And you can maybe not turn it upside the right side up, so that, because like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like you can diversify the people that you choose to be around, that you maybe listen to on podcasts, that you actively work with when you're at work, the kinds of stories and things that you hear, or that I don't know, like, how can you diversify your own approach even? When we do something, we tend to do it in a similar order, and with the idea that this is the right way. When we enter a classroom, we tend to pick a seat, and then we will go back to that seat every single time for the rest of the semester. And why? Like, even if seats aren't assigned, seats aren't assigned. You can just pick another seat, and if someone comes in there and they're like, "This is my seat," they're like, "That sucks. Go to another seat." What if you went to a different seat every time you had a class? I'm telling you, it will actually make your mind work in a more active way, because you're looking at the board, the teacher, and the lessons from a genuinely physical different perspective. Now, what if you did that with everything you do all the time? What if every month, you change up all the tchotchkes at your desk? What if every time you take a shower, you do like, or just like once every couple of times, you wash your hair in a different order? You put something at the end that you usually do at the beginning. And because what's going to happen is that you're taking your mind off autopilot. You are consciously showering now. And there is something to be said for autopilot. Very much so. Your body operates on autopilot for a lot of things, and it's actually a huge blessing, because when you need to kind of check out a little bit, you are able to do that, and it's really, really beautiful. Like, when people talk about autopilot driving, isn't that an amazing thing if you think about it? The fact that you were able to autopilot drive, like, that's kind of crazy. That's really kind of crazy that you were able to um autopilot drive. Like, that's kind of crazy that you got home even. And it's pretty cool that your body knew how to operate a piece of machinery and get home. But I mean, does that mean that you were a good driver the whole time? Probably not. You probably went a lot slower to compensate. You probably, blocked somebody in a shitty way. But you still made it home in one piece somehow. And that can apply to a lot of things. You probably don't think about what button you're hitting on the microwave. You probably don't think about a shower that much. There's something called literally the shower principle. So like, when you're doing something quote unquote mundane or repetitive, your brain has actually kind of like checked out and you're able to think about other things. So there is something really to be said for that principle. However, if you are constantly actively operating in autopilot, you're not really doing much. You're really just kind of floating and skating through life. So if you diversify your approach to anything as simple as a shower, then your mind starts having to really be more active and use parts of it that it's not used to using. And then that will translate into something else. And that thing might be another creative solution. It might be how to work on this project in a different way. And it also might help you work through limiting beliefs on why something might need to be done in a certain way. Why is it that you have to put everything in this order in your binder? And as someone with OCD, I know that maybe the answer is OCD. I do. But, you know, there's a difference between a disorder and a quirk or a idiosyncrasy or a preference, right? So and even with a disorder, I've done, cognitive behavioral therapy to realize that there's still an illogical part of my brain that still wants something to happen, that I can also be like, I don't agree with that with another part of my brain, right? So if you diversify your approach and you use like the shower example to be like, why is it that I have to do this specific thing in this order? And then you do it and you kind of are showing yourself and your body, yeah, turns out I don't have to do that in that order, and nothing bad happened. Nobody blew up. Nobody nobody died. It's almost like it's okay for me to wash my hair at the end. Turns out like that might be fine. And turns out that might actually be applicable to anything else that you do in life. Okay, so perfectionists are actually more likely to be introverted, at least in the way that they approach their work or whatever they do in a perfectionist way. They're more likely to be introverted. So that also means that if you're able to mingle and interact with other people in the way that you find yourself being perfectionist or acting with a sense of perfectionism, then if you can include other people in your process, then you're going to be less likely to you're going to have you're going to have a little bit, you're going to have a lot more perspectives, right? And that doesn't mean that you ever have to listen to everyone's advice or do anything with it, but because you there's a reason that you're probably being more introverted in that specific process, because you are specifically shutting other people out. You don't want that insight. You don't want other people's opinions because, again, your way you think is right, and you don't want anyone else to tell you otherwise. So if you invite at least one other person into this process, even if it feels like sacred and difficult to do, then it's not necessarily that you have to change anything about it. It's just like having another pair of eyes or ears in the thing that you're doing, and allowing someone to be present for your process and maybe even the mistake that you are so scared to share. So a lot of people will work slower and more deliberately to avoid mistakes. And again, we talked about the benefit of that, right? There's, if you are making less mistakes, you're more accurate, less errors to fix, less time to go back and money to fix things. But that also means that you are potentially really wasting a lot of time, whether that's getting started, whether that's putting it out into the world, whether that's proofreading over and over and over again, or fixing something that was fine in the first place. So this is an opportunity to balance that by letting yourself become in the flow more and to actually enjoy the process. So this is going back to connecting to your why, connecting to your passion, making sure that the thing that you're doing is actually relevant to what you're doing. Because if you are working so slow to only avoid mistakes, that is not in flow. That is not a passion project. This is literally just like a data based thing where you are only analog, yes, no, right, wrong. Passion is about just enjoyment and fulfillment. It's not about yes, no, right, wrong. So trying to allow yourself to enjoy what feels really good about it to you is going to help you to get in flow more. And if that feels a little bit more unattainable or out of reach right now to go from zero to flow, then maybe just set a time limit. So that can be, today I'm only going to work on this for 25 minutes. And at the end of that, it has to be good enough. It just does. And that's as much as I'm working on it, and that's the end. No more tinkering. Done, set. And speaking of that, a deadline or a timer can create paralysis or anxiety and like feeling like you're getting plowed over. But again, that's the feeling of like discomfort that comes with, you know, allowing yourself to feel in the state of discomfort allows you to feel more comfort. And the last two are feeling rigid and really just welcoming change into anything. So knowing that change is the only permanent thing and welcoming that. And then the last thing is just the fear of failure. And then I have a bunch of questions that I want to share with you, that I would love for you to take with you and do some journaling with. And this is the real work that you're going to be doing for the shadow work here, on how to be kind to the perfectionist parts of you. So I'm putting them here in the chat, but I also just want to walk through them with you, which is, first, can you acknowledge and accept that your brain wants to operate in this way? There is a reason that your brain wants to come at something, not necessarily everything, but there's something in your life at least that your brain is like, I feel the need to be a perfectionist about this specific thing. So just like, can you even acknowledge that is part of you? And can you accept it? And then that's like literally the first step. So maybe just writing, I acknowledge and accept that, and like, where is that? Like, acknowledge where that part is. What is coming up for you specifically? And then I want you to ask why it feels safer to do things in that way, in this perfectionist way, even when it can feel really frustrating. So there's a part of you that is protecting yourself with perfectionism, with this perfect aspect, right? So why does it feel safer? Why does your brain and body think that it's safer to keep doing stuff this way, even though you know you're frustrated about it a lot of the time? And then the next part is, what part of you feels scared of things not being perfect? And then there's 3 little questions underneath of that kind of branch off. It doesn't really like let me do the outline here in the chat. So the first part is, ask what part of you feels scared about things not being perfect. And that might be a specific part of your brain. It might be a specific area of your life. It might be a part of your body. It might be all 3. And then to like be more clear about that, the first sub question is, what part of your life are you worried about being the most perfect? And you could also phrase it as, what part of your life are you worried about being the least perfect? However, it feels most easy for you to read. So what area of your life? Is it work? Is it creativity? Is it your home life? Is it your sex life? Like, what is it that what part is like the most, I need this to be perfect? And that's just the answer, is just what area. And then the next one is, what part of your life do you spend the most time perfecting? And that might be the same. It might be the same. And maybe you can even take that question a little further and be like, how much time, or how am I spending the time? What am I doing? Get maybe more specific with that. And then what area do you find it easier, the most easy to let it flow? So when we have the duality of perfectionism and like this rigidity and then the flow, is there an area of your life, like one part, but maybe it's not total flow, but in comparison to rigidity and perfectionism, you find it a lot easier to flow? And what is that? What area is that? Do you maybe find it really difficult to paint, but then you, or maybe you find it really easy to paint, but then you find it really difficult to write, or whatever, I don't know, cooking, or I don't know, anything, really anything. It can be very specific or very broad. And then the last section is ask what part of you feels scared of failure. So that is a very general question, and you can also just choose to answer the 4 questions under it, which is, what area of life is this in? Again, what part of life is this in? Is this in the area of finance? Is it abundance? Is it spirituality? Like, what part of your life are you the most scared of failing in? Because that's what this all comes back to, is failure and fear. And that is how you're compensating with perfectionism, so that you don't fail and that you're not scared of failing, so that you compensate with perfectionism. That's the end takeaway of this, is that you're scared of failing, and you're so scared that you're compensating with perfectionism as like an unhealthy coping mechanism. So what part of you is so scared to fail? Where is that coming from? In your body? Where does it feel tight when I say that? And then what area of life is it? And then the next part is, when was the first time you remember like you failed in this area? How old were you? What was the memory? If it's with money, maybe it was something with your parents. Maybe it's seeing something, maybe it doesn't even need to be something that you did, maybe it's something you witnessed. And then the next one, second to last, is, what would you say to someone who was struggling with a fear of failing in this area? So objectively, if someone came to you, or your best friend, or your child, and said on paper, like what you just wrote down, I am scared of failing at, and then fill in the blank of what you just told the paper that you're scared of, what would you say to them? Just blanket advice that they were struggling with. What's blanket advice that you would give to someone that you love, who is struggling with fear of failing? And then take that advice yourself. And then the last one is, how can you demonstrate and prove that you have succeeded already, even in 1% or one step in this area? So who was I listening to? It was Gabby Rosie. I was taking a class with her, and someone was saying that they were worried that they were never going to sell any of their art. And she said, but you have made a sale. And they were like, yeah, but like, I'm never going to sell. And she was like, but you have made a sale. And then we just kind of talked about, like, how can you show your brain that you actually have done this thing already that you're telling yourself you can't or haven't done? So have you actually done this? Maybe how can you objectively say, if it's financial and you're saying, like, I can never save money, well, have you ever bought something? Like, I think if you bought something, you can objectively say that you have saved like at least $1, right? You technically did up until that point of being able to buy a thing. And If you're scared that no one will love you, when's the last time someone told you that they did? You know what I mean? Like, there are a lot of abstract fears that we come up with. And a lot of them are coming from our inner critic and telling ourselves, like, we're not good enough, we're too much or not enough. And then when we ask you, who told you that? Why is it that you feel that way? You're like, well, I guess I made it up. I told myself that. And it's like, right. So that's not that it's invalid, but can we at least notice that that's not coming from anyone else? Like, no one told you that you're too this. It's actually kind of mostly that you believe that you're that. So, how can you demonstrate to yourself that this fear, if only in a little way, is slightly illogical? That's how we counter things at first, is with logic. How can you show your brain and your body that you have actually succeeded just with a piece of logic? Okay, so those are my prompts to you on how to be kind to the perfectionist parts of you and really engaging in some shadow work for perfectionism and kindness, because this part is, it's really, it can feel really stuck, but it's not a bad thing. There are really positive aspects to perfectionism and how we can really get them working for us instead of feeling like we need to work against it. But that said, we don't want to ever operate from a place of fear. So if you are wanting to join for May, which is already almost here, then we're going to be working on abundance and scarcity, and you can join us at uncustomary.org/membership. And my new book, Merriment Making, the Guide to Getting Your Joy Back, is on sale for 20% off with 20 bonuses. And that is at uncustomary.org/merriment making. And I'll put the other sign up page here. And I hope you enjoyed this. And yeah, thanks for spending time with us. And yeah, I hope you have a really great day. This will be recorded and put in the Babes group. And yeah, all right. Have a great night. Uncustomary Rogers, won't you be my neighbor? Thank you.